let's just take a moment. Allow your eyes to close. And just allow yourself to pull the awareness, the attention, the focus from being hooked in everything around you. Just draw it inward. So meditation's not about dulling the senses. It's just about shifting that awareness from being like antenna pointed in all the directions around us, picking up every sound, every smell, every sight. Instead of that, we just take those antennae and we turn them into the very core, the very depth of our being. Just allow yourself to be fully aware, fully present. As you inhale, feel the flow of the waters of Mother Ganga flowing into you. This sacred Mother Ganga, this sacred goddess energy, she doesn't flow only next to us, but she actually can flow through us. So as you inhale, just allow yourself to take in that presence as the sacred prana, that life force, enters your being. Feel those rushing waters of Mother Ganga flowing into you, flowing through you. She's the goddess of liberation and freedom. So feel those waters flowing through you, freeing you of every way that you are stuck. Feel those waters loosening within you. All of that which is blocking you from you. And as you exhale, feel yourself letting go into her waters. Whatever it is that a narrative, a drama about who you are, an anger, a grudge, an aspect of your personality, your history. Just allow yourself, as you exhale, to let go into those waters of Mother Ganga flowing through you. And just allow her to carry that. Carry it all the way out to the ocean, freeing you. Feel yourself surrender. Surrender to that sacred lap of the Mother, the sacred waters of the Goddess. As you exhale, just let go. And as you inhale, allow her in more and more. Flowing into you, through you, as you. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at chest level in Namaste. And just gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press those palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly and gently open the eyes and lower the hands. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be back together again. So tonight, instead of starting with one of the questions that comes from our online family, where we usually start, instead of that, we have a question here in the back that we had run out of time last night to take, and I promised her we would start with it today. So why don't you come up to either of the microphones? Yeah, choose a side, either way is fine.
Namaste, Sadhviji.
Namaskar.
My name is Joanne. I feel closer to what I would call God being here than at any other point in my life. Ideally, more than anything, want a deep relationship with God, but I don't know who God is. I have a block from childhood of a man in white robes sitting on a throne in heaven. And
long white beard.
long white beard. And that doesn't resonate for me.
Yeah.
And when I pray, I want to know who I am praying to.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So a lot of us have this preconceived notion of God as this old man, long white beard and robes, sitting somewhere up in heaven in the clouds, judging us, rewarding us, or punishing us. And then as we dive deep, as you say, it tends not to feel like that presence that resonates so deeply. So who is God? Beautiful. There's nothing that is not God. One of the biggest myths about the Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition, is that it's a polytheistic religion, that we have lots of gods. It is most definitely not a polytheistic religion. We do not believe in many, many gods. We believe in an infinite number of reflections, manifestations of one supreme divine. But it's also not a monotheistic religion. We don't believe that there is one God sitting somewhere looking like something, if it's not that image, a different image. What we believe is that there is nothing but God. And that all of the creation has been not only created by, but created of the Creator. And that anything that seems like it is not God is due to what we call Maya, illusion, which is spoken about as this veil that wraps us up in this ignorance that says, gotta make more money, then I'll be happy. Right? That's Maya. Gotta have that, then I'll be happy. Oh, you're too fat. Oh, you're too skinny. Oh, you're too fair. Oh, you're too dark. Gotta just change that, then I'll be happy. Maya. So the path of knowing God is a path of removing that which is blocking us from seeing the divine. And there's kind of three aspects of ignorance that we speak about. And I won't go into them in too much detail because it's a whole lecture in and of itself. But if you think about a lake, for example, and you want to see yourself in the lake, there's three things that are going to block you from being able to see. One is junk, just grime on the surface of the lake. Just that film, right? You go out to a body of water, a pond, a lake, and there's just that grime and gunk that's kind of on the surface of the lake. And you need to move it aside to be able to see. Another aspect is the movement of the water. If the water's moving a lot, you can't see very clearly. The third aspect is, quite literally, if there were a piece of fabric, a veil over the water, you wouldn't be able to see. And so these are three aspects of what we speak about as agyan, lack of wisdom. And the first is just the junk that makes up our minds. Our anger, our grudges, our desires, our aversions, our egos, all of that, all the places your mind goes. You sit down to meditate, all the places your mind might go. The blueberry muffin you'd like to have for breakfast, the person you're having a fight with, this thing you're angry about, this thing that's going to happen next week that you're nervous about, all of the places the mind goes is that junk on the surface of the water. And that which is used to free yourself of that is satsang, seva. These are the things that purify the mind, that remove that junk that occupies the mind. Satsang, seva, all of that brings us into a state of purity. Then you've got the movement of the mind, this constant jumping around, what we call the monkey mind. It's very hard to know God when your mind is jumping all over the place. And the pathways out of the monkey mind are what we speak about as Raja Yoga, our path of meditation, prayer, chanting, japa, yogasanas, these practices that bring stillness and quiet into the mind. And then you've got this veil, quite literally, Maya, that just blocks the truth from view, wraps you up in stickiness. Maya's this sticky veil that makes you think that you actually are your body, that you are your story, that you are your relationships, that you are all of that. And it's sticky because it's also what our culture tells us. It's also what people around us tell us. It's also what all of that we've been born and raised in, that we're getting from the external world. So it's sticky. And it's this veil. And to remove the veil, we do that through practices of Jnana Yoga. We remove agyan, lack of wisdom, through practices of wisdom. Through practices of bhakti. Through just love. Because through love you can see the truth. Right? It's like if your loved one is lying to you, you know it. Right? If a friend or a colleague or a stranger lies to you, you might not know it. But when someone you really know deeply, in deep love, when they lie to you, you feel it. You know it. So that path of wisdom, that path of love, are pathways through that. And karma yoga, that using every moment, every minute, every action as a way to see the truth. Because when we get involved in karma yoga, seva, it's so easy to get lost in this illusion of we are the ones doing the work. I am the great humanitarian. I am the giver. You are the receiver. We are the doers. You are the lazy ones. And real karma yoga, real seva is all about, that's why it purifies the mind. Because it removes that separation. It makes us realize, we are one. So these are just three ways that we speak about that which blocks us from sight and how to free ourselves from it. Remember, lastly, that knowing God is knowing yourself. Meaning, it's not like knowing about outer space where you most definitely need like a really thick book and a good course. You're not going to intuit it unless you are at the level of the rishis and the sages who somehow, sitting in these Himalayas and caves, somehow intuited the level of science today, much of which that still has not yet been discovered. But that's a whole other topic. But until and unless you reach that level, you're not going to intuit outer space through your spiritual practice. You need a class, you need a course, you need a book, you better study. But knowing God is knowing the self. You're going to inner space. It's you. And so all you need to do is clear that which is preventing you from knowing you. And then you're there. Beautiful. Wonderful question. Thank you. Other questions? Yes. Come, sure. There's a mic right there.
So, for what I know, as far as I know, you had a very revelatory point in your life when you came here to India with your husband, and he was seeking and you were not seeking. And then all of a sudden, you had a realization, a life-changing realization that cut through Maya, cut through all considerations, cut through everything, and spoke to you and told you, you belong here, and set a new direction to your life. Would you be kind enough to describe how it felt to where you knew for sure that there was no doubt about what you were perceiving and that it was the right thing to do?
Sure, yeah. So my whole life, even though I had never been a religious person, and I had never even been someone who identified as spiritual. So sometimes you have people who say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I wasn't even there. I didn't identify as religious. I didn't identify as spiritual. But I was deeply committed to truth. Deeply. At all costs. Part of it was personal, part of it was culture. Come from LA. And at that time, amongst my friend circle, and of course we were not yoga doers, we were not, in any of those circles, but we had a sense of commitment to truth at all costs. I cannot even tell you the number of times I remember saying, well, but it's true. Like, of course I should say it. Of course you should say it. It's true. I remember when I was 16, and my boyfriend, who I was convinced was my soulmate and the love of my life, who's a year older than I am, he was going off to university the next year, and I was going into my last year of high school. And my dad, who's a divorce lawyer, and at that point had spent already a few decades of his life getting people divorced, says to me, so what are you and Eric going to do now that he's going off to university? And I said, well, we're going to stay together forever because, of course, we're soulmates, but in an assurance that you can only have when you're 16. I said, but we're going to have an open relationship because we're going to be far away from each other. And my dad said, well, that sounds interesting. Tell me about that. And I said, well, we're going to stay together, but we're going to date other people, but we're going to be totally honest about it. So my dad says, let me get this straight. You're going to date other people, tell each other all about it, and stay together forever. And I said, yes. And as someone who only had the most faith in total truth, and my dad, God bless him, in just what I always say was like the quintessential moment of how to parent a teenager. I mean, it was just some first prize blue ribbon award of how to parent a teenager. He did not say, are you stupid? He did not say, what, are you crazy? He said, well, that sounds very interesting. I look forward to hearing how that turns out for you. And I share that story because it's one of my favorite examples of how committed to truth I was. It was inconceivable to me that something could be true and you wouldn't want to know it. That something could be true and it wouldn't be in the highest service of everyone involved. So fast forward a few years, I end up in India, married to someone else, of course. And I have this experience, as you described, that was something that I had never either anticipated, imagined, read about, heard about, longed for. An experience of that shattering of the very sense of who I thought I was. Every bit of it. But a shattering into such ecstasy and such truth and such rightness that it was exquisite. Doesn't begin to describe it. When you say, how did you know? I think we all know. But I think that because I, A, was so committed to truth, and B, being so committed to truth was such a core part of my self-identity, that there wasn't an aspect in me that was going to let me not see that. I think as we get older and as we get more and more attached to what my life is going to look like, what is the right way to do things, I think we miss a lot of things. Not because we don't see them, but because we don't let ourselves see them. And so for me, losing that which I had put together in my life so far was so much less scary to me than not living by my truth. Because this was just a role and a thing and a degree and a relationship and a whatnot, but this was my whole identity over here, was someone committed to truth. And so there was no way I was going to allow myself to pretend that I hadn't seen it. I've always held myself in all ways, but particularly the very deep psychological ways. I've really held myself always to a very strict inner sense of truth about myself. I may not always tell it all to everybody, but I'm not going to deny it to myself. And so there was no way that, even though it was certainly not the package that I had thought my life was going to come in, there was no way that I could walk away from it and know myself. And by the way, fast forward 25 years when my book came out, which it sounds like you've read with the amount of detail that you have about my life. I had several people actually, say to me in different ways, but the same topic, which was, are you really sure you want to be so honest? Like, you've spent 25 years developing an impact, an influence, a name, a reputation, or respect. And a lot of these things might be things that make people think differently about you. And just as 25 years earlier, I would not have known myself if I tried to pretend that I hadn't just had the experience that I had just had. 25 years later, if I had removed truth simply because of what people were going to think about me, I would no longer know the woman who occupied my body. And that was my response each time was, if I removed truth, I wouldn't even know the woman who occupied my body. So that for me has always been a really core aspect. And I think it's certainly something I'm deeply grateful for. It's a way that I was raised. It's not something that just came to me. I was raised like that. You did not tell a lie in my house. Anything else was forgivable. But you did not lie under any circumstances, for any reason, about anything. And so, yeah, I'm really, really grateful for that. Because I think a lot of us have those sorts of moments. And I don't believe that we only get one of them, and I don't believe that if you miss it, then your chance is over. I think that every time we have an experience of knowing truth, of seeing truth, we have that beautiful opportunity to open ourselves to it. But I think a lot of times, depending on the life we've built for ourselves, it's really scary. And so we prevent ourselves from really seeing that we've seen it, because it's easier not to. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. Yes, you. Come on up. Pick a mic.
With my fiance, who is Indian, born and raised, from the Hindu religion. And now that we have come to India to meet his family, our relationship is not accepted at all. So he's in a different state currently, and I've come here for some peace while he deals with the family, because his sister is getting married in a few days. And I guess my question is, what is your advice to navigate this situation? How do we move forward, knowing that my partner is so devoted to his family, but also we're in this relationship, knowing it's not accepted?
Are his parents going to try to, stay at the mic for a second, is his family going to try to prevent you from getting married?
So his mom and dad are accepting. However, it is the rest of the family.
Got it. Okay. So, yeah, it's certainly a struggle. I'm very sorry that it's something that you're going through. It is something that is as old as religion. That's as old as socioeconomic status. That's as old as race and nationality is this sense of wanting our families, wanting our children to, whether it's marriage or whether it's just playing with kids. Like, don't play with those kids. They're from the, wrong neighborhood. Don't eat lunch with them. They're not like us. And we see this all over. I pray that as time goes by, people's hearts get more and more open. Some of it, in India, some of it is rooted in also just really a truth of life, which is that in general, marriage is a struggle. Even if you are from the same race, the same religion, the same socioeconomic status, the same values, same ethics, same everything, you're still going to fight. It's a struggle. And so what Indian culture has really anchored itself in is, given that marriage is a struggle anyway, let's give you the very best chance that you have, which is at least if we can bring you together with as much in common as possible, with the greatest likelihood that you're going to have the same values, the same ethics, the same priorities, the same choices and decisions and life paths, that you're going to have the best chance of having a successful marriage. So it's not stemming from a place of discrimination. It's not stemming from a place of superiority or us versus them. It's really stemming from a cultural desire. There's a big cultural taboo against divorce. And so it stems from let's give these people the very best chance that they can have for a successful marriage. Unfortunately, it's not very open to the possibility that you actually could have people of different backgrounds able to overcome differences and make a beautiful marriage. But slowly, slowly things are changing. I would say the fact that his parents are okay with it is fantastic. Let them deal with the rest of the family. That's not your responsibility. Your husband's made a choice, your fiance's made a choice. Wonderful. Congratulations. Fortunately, you live in Canada, not a village in India. Fortunately, the disapproving family members are not living in your house or next door. Meaning that the amount of interaction you're going to have with them is not so much. If it were his immediate family and they were threatening to, disown him, it would be more of a challenge. But I'd say have faith. Have faith, because eventually they'll open their hearts, eventually they'll accept, and understand that their disapproval is not a specific disapproval of you. They're not saying you are wrong. It's a disapproval that stems out of concern for him. So appreciate that. You love him, they love him. You want the best for him, they want the best for him. They just have what you could consider a bit of perhaps a narrow vision of what the best for him is. Maybe they don't know him as well as you do. So they want the best for him in a very vague, general sense of like, if I were him, this is what we would want. But ultimately, they do want the best for him. They also are committed to the Dharma. And so they want to make sure that their children are raised in the Dharma. There's always a concern that in a mixed marriage, what's going to happen to the kids? And so in a loyalty to a tradition, to a culture, there's this concern. So have love and compassion for them. Be your brightest being of light. whenever you meet them. And just have faith that eventually truth and love and family connection and all of that is going to win out. There's also a belief sometimes that if we withhold our approval, that people are going to not do something. And so they may be in that stage of, well, maybe if we refuse to accept it, he's going to drop her and marry somebody else. But once they recognize that he's with you because he loves you and that whether they approve or not, he's marrying you, likely they'll come around. Likely they're not going to want to lose him just because he's married someone other than whom they would have chosen. But in your deep self, recognize it has nothing to do with you. None of it is a statement about you. Because it's very easy to feel badly. It's not about you. It's nothing to do with you. You are a representative of just all of that which is different. And therefore scary when it comes into our family. And just keep living your truest, brightest, most beautiful self. And eventually they'll come around. And think about it this way. You've got the great joy of being here in Rishikesh on the banks of Ganga, that it's given you this freedom to explore India. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. We will now be having our satsang again each evening right after the arti. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And